the late 1980s and into the 1990s, Japanese cinema, and particularly anime, started to see a boom of popularity in the West. But it was one film in particular, a 1988 dystopian science fiction body horror, which reshaped perceptions of what animation could achieve. Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira was an animation that dealt with dark existential political themes and included moments of violence and body horror that introduced anime to a whole new audience. These weren't the kind of family-friendly animated films that were dominant in the West. A decade later, in the midst of the first anime boom in the West, Satoshi Kon took the idea of horror animation one step further with Perfect Blue, a hugely prescient psychological horror movie that explored the dangers of the internet and tackled themes of exploitation and fractured identities, and provided inspiration for countless horror and genre movies in the decades to come. Join me as we continue exploring the evolution of man-made monsters, and we discuss two anime horror classics, Akira and Perfect Blue. Welcome back to the evolution of horror. My name is Mike Muncer. As ever, I am your host. In this podcast, we explore and dissect the history and the evolution of the horror genre, one subgenre at a time. We are currently in the middle of our 11th season, exploring the evolution of man-made monsters. And this is part 23. In this week's episode, as that intro suggested, we are going to be tackling anime for the first time on this podcast. We're going to be talking about Akira from 1988 and Perfect Blue from 1997. Both of these discussions will be spoilerific, so give yourself a treat and watch both of these bangers before you listen to our discussion. So, I sat down with longtime friend of the pod and anime super nerd, Becky Darke, to discuss two of her favourite movies of all time in depth. Enjoy! Hi, Becky Darke.
Hi, Mike Muncer.
Hello. This is nice. We're actually in person recording.
There you are.
You're right there in three dimensions.
3 dimensions.
Which is ironic considering we're talking about 2D animation this week. But
I assume that's why we've done it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Why not? So you were here a few weeks ago with Stevie anyway, discussing your fave basket case. And so we talked a little bit about kind of mad science and that kind of theme. So I guess this time I want to start by asking you a bit about, before we get into these two films, this is the first time really, I think, on the history of this podcast I've covered any anime.
I can't believe this.
I know. It's crazy, actually, that it's taken this long to get there. So I guess, I just, first of all, I want to ask you about your thoughts on anime. Have you always been a big fan of this?
I have, and I'm actually very grateful, considering this is the first time you've ever done anime, that you've got me on to talk about it, because, it's a bit of a... It's a bit of a passion point of mine, actually. I'm quite nerdy about anime.
And people who are into anime are nerdy.
This is what I was about to say. I think you are nerdy about a lot of things.
Yeah.
You're not really nerdy about anime.
I'm not. I am a bit of an anime novice, I've got to say. In fact, Akira, I'd really never even seen it before.
That's amazing.
Before this week. So I'm very much not up on my anime. But you are very much up on your anime.
I love Japanese culture kind of in general. Haruki Murakami is my favourite novelist, and I love Japanese cinema in general. But anime has been something that I've been into, since I was a teen. I mean, it was kind of the perfect time for me in the mid-90s when I was a teenager. I was born in 82. And so sort of mid-90s, when you started getting films like Ghost in the Shell and Ninja Scroll, and especially when they were coming over to the UK, I don't know if you remember because you weren't really into it, but I used to go into HMV and Virgin Megastore and stuff, and they sold, as well as kind of Tartan Extreme. Yeah. And, distributors that were bringing films like Battle Royale, etc. over. Yeah. There was also manga video. And it's got the Pearl Jam, Snowflake. It's a bit like that. Amazing. Red, it says manga in the middle of it. And they were the kind of key distributors in the UK of anime films. And so you'd be getting key titles like Akira, Ghost in the Shell, Ninja Scroll was one that I was obsessed with, Blood the Last Vampire. And you would kind of go in and you'd see like, oh, what have they got? And you'd look out for that little manga symbol on the spine. And just kind of pick them up. And often, like, you might have read about something in a magazine, or like, I think it was like 94, there was a documentary on like Channel 4 or something by Jonathan Ross.
Yeah,
he's got a
he
real
loves
thing.
it. Yeah,
he's got a real thing about Japanese culture as well. I remember watching that, and it just really kind of got its claws into me quite early. And also, there's something that's quite edgy about these types of anime. These anime that sort of lean into, be it horror or sci-fi or kind of cyberpunk, sort of like tech noir stuff.
Yeah.
That it did at the time feel like very kind of, I'm cool because I'm watching this Japanese animation film about all of these slightly like edgier, kind of darker subject matters.
Yeah.
I'm, watching them with the subtitles because I'm a purist.
Absolutely.
Very important. But it was all just VHS. And so you had a relatively limited kind of number of titles that you had access to. But those of us who were into them, and there was, huge swathes of the UK population who were, would then just kind of like watch them over and over again.
Yeah.
And so they sort of like have lodged themselves in our DNA, I think.
Well, now it's just, and I guess now because of streaming, right? But it's grown and grown and grown and grown. It's huge now. How would you describe, like, how is anime different to your, I mean, I know this is a very broad question because anime can be anything really in terms of genre and tone, but how would you say it differs to your kind of Hollywood mainstream animated movies, Pixar, Disney, that kind of thing? So
in terms of like the actual like look of it, it tends, or certainly, because let's not forget that like modern sort of Disney and Pixar stuff will have like drawn on some kind of anime style. But certainly like in the 90s when we were watching kind of Disney classics like, Sleeping Beauty and Sword in the Stone and Bambi and all that sort of thing, like there was a much more kind of stylized look to anime. That very, like, you get kind of spoofs of it with the look of anime characters. So they'll have like huge eyes and tiny little mouths until like they scream, and then they have huge mouths and they have blue hair and, all of this kind of stuff. Anybody who's seen Strong Bad will know what I'm talking about. But also like storytelling tends to be very complex. I think in Western animation, there was much more this feeling that like animation was for kids.
Yes.
So they were kids' films. They may be sophisticated and they may deal with, relatively complex themes. But I think when anime first started being adopted sort of culturally by Westerners, there was this feeling of like, this is animated content for adults.
Yes.
Complex emotions, I guess, rather than just like swooning romance. And, all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And also I think like there's something about anime that tends to focus on Japanese culture, whereas Western animation could have its roots in all sorts of different Western cultures. And there's something so just definitively and intrinsically Japanese, I think, about anime.
Yeah, I would say so. And you mentioned this already, that it can be more adult, that, especially when you were getting into it, it was quite edgy, right? Does it often dip into horror anime? Do they deal with a lot of horror?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I suppose, because this is the thing, right? Like, I sort of corrected myself just now. Like, anime isn't a genre.
No.
It's a medium. Like, animation is a medium.
Yeah.
Anime is a type of animation, and so it can kind of it can do any genre, at all. Like, there's ballet anime. There's like that's like a big thing, like a big movement. And so of course there is horror anime, and what it does is it then tends to also pick up all of the horror subgenres. So you get like psychological horror, like Perfect Blue that we'll talk about today. You've got like vampire horror, like Blood the Last Vampire that I mentioned just now, Vampire Hunter D. There's a lot of body horror, So that's definitely something that we see in Akira, for example. But I mean, there might be people, as I know that you get sometimes with your podcast, going, well, Akira isn't a horror film. It's like, well, but there is so much in it that is horrifying.
Yeah, completely.
And so, like as a medium, as a storytelling aesthetic, it's an incredible way to tell horror stories, because what animation, as we know, allows filmmakers to do is to really like push the boundaries of what they can put on screen that comes out of their imaginations. And so if you can think it like horror wise, you can pretty much put it on screen.
Yeah.
Because all you need to do is draw it.
Is animate it as beautifully as these are. Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Easy. It allows horror filmmakers to sort of splurge their darkest fantasies like all over the screen, as long as they, can work with the sorts of people who can like render it, basically.
And I suppose, and again, I guess this goes with it being not just aimed at kids. They are more challenging sort of intellectually as well, right? Like actually they're not, and I guess this is Japanese cinema generally, probably actually, compared to sort of Hollywood. Things aren't always spelled out for you. We're not always dealing with kind of very linear kind of traditional narratives.
Yep.
They can end in quite ambiguous ways a lot of the time. And that is, I suppose that's not just an anime thing. That is a Japanese cinema thing a lot of the time,
Definitely. I think that's one of the things that really fascinated me about it when I first started watching Japanese films, was like, I have no idea what's going on.
Right, exactly.
But a lot of the time that doesn't really matter, because I mean, I'm happy to be corrected on this, but I think that tends to be just generally sort of Japanese like storytelling, not even just in cinema. Like it doesn't have such a linear A to Z plot approach, and it can really play with kind of reality and perception. I mean, I mentioned Haruki Murakami just now, who's a novelist, and he is very much in the vein of like magical realism. And you're always kind of wondering, how much of this is actually happening, and et cetera, et cetera. They've got a really kind of rich heritage in that in terms of their art. And so the slightly more like confounding narratives of anime, I don't know, like it feels very sort of weird and different and mind-bending to Western audiences, but I think that's just the way that like Japanese culture tells stories.
Absolutely. So let's get into it. We're gonna, and you've mentioned how it became such a big deal in the sort of 90s, and I think we'll get into this, but Akira surely is a pretty big part of that, right? Is that part of the reason as to why? I guess launching it into more Western mainstream culture, because Akira was such a huge hit, right? Or a sort of cult hit.
It was, totally. And I think it's had so much influence that you can now see kind of going down through the years. But at the time, it was such a kind of shot in the arm, I think, for people in the West who were like, what is this? Like the look of it. I mean, it basically like helped to create this idea of these huge, like neon drenched metropolises. That, you see in stuff like Blade Runner as well.
Yes.
And there's so much kind of influence.
Well, because Blade Runner came first, didn't it? And there does seem to be a shared DNA.
Yeah, definitely.
From Blade Runner to Akira.
Like Blade Runner was a definite influence on Akira.
Yeah.
But I think what Akira was doing was letting people in the West like see just like how different things could look on screen like when they're animated, as opposed to what we were used to at the time with studios like Disney.
Yes.
And it was such a kind of explosion, I think. And so like it was 88, and then I think it was like 90, like early 90s that it got distributed by manga in the UK.
Right.
And then following that, films like Ghost in the Shell and Ninja Scroll were released like on VHS in the UK, like much closer to their original Japanese cinematic releases. And so at that point, there was much more of this kind of like, we've heard that this film exists in Japan, it's just been released, oh, and here we can see it.
Right, yeah.
Whereas with Akira, I think there was almost as well this feeling of like, oh my God, like this is, I don't know, it's like this treasure. It's kind of come from like the late 80s and we're sort of 5 or 6 years on and like now we can see it. It's like, it was this sort of this... really special thing,
like
as you say, like an event. Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Well, let's get into it because there's lots to discuss with this film. Akira from 1988. So I'm glad you're doing this part, Becky. Set the scene for us. Tell us the plot of Akira.
Strap in, lads.
Strap in.
All right. I've had to write it down. And also this is scratching the surface.
Sure.
Bear with me. In the aftermath of a mysterious explosion that leveled Tokyo in 1988, the rebuilt Neo-Tokyo of 2019 is a pressure cooker of corruption and youth rebellion. So we get Kaneda, who is the leader of a teen biker gang. They all ride around on their motorbikes around Neo-Tokyo. His childhood friend, Tetsuo, gets into an accident when they are out on their bikes and he encounters basically like a secret government agency. So he has a crash and there is like a rebel group who have kidnapped this little psychic child from like a government agency. And in the aftermath, Tetsuo gets like taken by the agency. He is then subjected to all the same experiments that the other little psychic children have been subjected to, including Akira. Tetsuo then, when he's experimented on, his powers kind of get out of control. And he then starts to spiral while the military and the rebels and his friends and the psychic kids are all sort of trying to stop him from basically going nuclear.
Right.
And destroying Neo-Tokyo the way Akira destroyed Tokyo back in the day.
Lovely.
I started reading it out and then I just went completely off piste.
You did, yeah.
But that's about it, right?
That's the gist of it,
I
think. Yeah, absolutely. I've got so many questions based even on that plot synopsis, actually. But let me start by what do you think of this movie then? What's your sort of history with it and what do you think of it generally?
5 stars, no notes. Probably in my top 5 movies of all time.
Wow.
I adore this film. I literally think it's flawless. I don't think it has aged a day since it was made. It feels like a new experience every time I watch it. It's unbelievable. And yeah, I mean, I find it completely thrilling and terrifying and heartbreaking and exciting. It's a perfect movie.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I've only seen it the once, right, in preparation. Well, I think I watched it when I was young, but I didn't really take it in and I didn't really have many memories of it. And so really watching it felt like the first time for me this week. And I agree with you that it is one of the most beautiful looking films I have ever seen. The animation is just unbelievable, particularly when it gets to really flourish and go into the kind of psychic dream sequences and stuff like that. Like the teddy, the body horror, the kind of surrealism, all of that stuff I was like, oh, holy shit, this is absolutely incredible. And I agree with you, it hasn't aged a day. I loved the music, I loved the soundtrack, right? The world, the look of it, unbelievable. It does definitely have Blade Runner vibes to me. It has that same thing where you just want to soak in that world for 2 hours, right? It is unbelievable. Plot-wise, I was a bit lost. And I think, and I'm not saying I disliked the plot, but I think for me, there wasn't a huge amount for me to kind of grab onto and really invest in the way that we'll talk about it, but I really can invest in Perfect Blue. Yeah. Emotionally, I have a connection narratively to it.
Akira, very similar to how I feel about Blade Runner, actually. I'm left slightly cold by what I'm seeing. But having said that, I've thought about it a lot since I've watched it, and I have only watched it once, and I feel like it's the sort of movie that you probably need to let sit with you for a while. You probably need to read up about it, talk about it, maybe watch it again.
I mean, definitely watch it again.
It's a grower, not a shower, I imagine.
Big
in a way,
time.
You know?
I mean, the first 5 times I watched it, didn't have a fucking clue.
Yeah.
And it's dense.
It's dense.
It's really dense.
There are so many characters. There are different
and you
factions,
don't get
the government, the military, the different gangs, the girlfriends, the psychic kids, and then there's a lot going on, isn't there?
You don't get a lot of time, because it's a long film as well.
Yeah.
You don't get a lot of time considering how long it is spent on characterization, or not necessarily characterization, backstory, I suppose. You don't get to know a lot about these people.
No.
And so you are very much just dropped into the middle of this world and expected to keep up.
Well, this is the thing that is so let me start off by asking you, because this is it. We don't really know much about even the character of Tetsuo, right? Who is essentially our main character, I would say, right? He has been experimented on, which has caused him to go nuclear, essentially, right? Was he always psychic before that? Is that what we were led to believe, that he's always had some sort of supernatural ability?
I think so, because when they take him off, so he has the crash, with number 28, I think it is, the little boy who's one of the 3 psychic kids.
I love the psychic kids.
I love the psychic kids. I want to be friends with them.
I know, they're really cute.
They're really cute.
Yeah.
Because also they're like little old people at the same time.
I was going to say they look like old people.
Yeah, they're the perfect mashup of little kids and little old people. It's adorable.
Yeah.
So he has the encounter with, I think, number 28, and the military sort of scoop him up and take him back, and they put him in this big sort of elaborate MRI machine, and you get this sort of 3D imaging of, like, I guess his brain waves. And what they notice at that point is that his brain waves look really, really similar to Akira. And Akira is the most powerful of the psychic kids they've ever had in their weird military nursery. And so when they see that, they're like, right, let's keep him and we'll do more tests.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll take a step back for a moment before we get into more plot intricacies. This was based on a manga, right?
Right.
How familiar are you with the manga?
I am not.
Okay, fine.
It is over 2,000 pages long. I've read quite a lot of manga.
Yeah.
I haven't read this. But I think what tends to happen with a manga to anime adaptation is that because a lot of manga are like that kind of length, they go across multiple volumes, there's always going to be a fair amount of like stripping back of stuff for the on-screen adaptation, and that is definitely what's happened here. I did a little bit of research. I don't actually know from personal experience, but apparently it compresses some of the major plot lines.
Yes.
A lot of the characters that we see in the film, like Kay, the rebel girl, the colonel, and some of the others have a lot more kind of backstory and characterization kind of arcs.
Yes.
Whereas in this, they're a little bit more kind of, in the movie, they're a little bit more kind of archetypal, I guess.
Yeah, I would say so.
But from what I understand, the core of the story and the core of a lot of the characters is there in the original manga. But I think that Akira is much more of a character in the manga than he is in the film.
That's really interesting, because Akira's basically absent.
He's basically not in it.
Basically not in it. Which is really interesting. Didn't know that. But that also makes sense, right? That, you know, there is so much crammed into 2 hours in this movie. It doesn't surprise me that it's come from what did you say? It was 2,000 page. 2,000 page. That tracks, I would say,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, if you think about something like Game of Thrones, right?
Right.
Like they
Exactly.
have done how many seasons of that?
Exactly.
And spin-offs and prequels and blah, 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 blah. And this was quite a...
This was condensed into 120 minutes.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah, fair. The director, Katsuhiro Otomo, is obviously like this movie was kind of really considered a bit of a game changer, right? In a lot of ways, in kind of not just in kind of bringing anime to the mainstream Western kind of pop culture in the 90s, but also just for what it was doing and the sort of story it was telling, I think, right? Yeah. He's known as the father of kind of the new manga new wave, right, as well. What does that mean? Is that just like a new type of storytelling we were getting?
Yeah, it was like, I think, so it was before Akira, or like around the time that Akira was a manga. So it's like 70s, 80s, basically. And it was like any new wave, I would say. It was kind of driven by like young writers and creators who were looking to kind of do something different and kind of break away from like the traditional. So exactly as the phrase new wave would suggest. It's exactly the same thing, just with manga. And it was kind of looking at much more like experimental storytelling, these darker themes that we've already mentioned, this kind of lean into kind of more realistic storytelling, so more kind of like grounded in
sort of politics and
exactly,
Cold War and whatever else, you know. Yeah,
exactly that. Adult subject matter, you know, that kind of thing. And so Katsuhiro Otomo was one of the kind of forefathers of that movement.
Love that. And we've sort of mentioned this, and obviously, so he did the manga and he directed the film as well. So you've essentially kind of taken those visuals, I guess, and brought them to life in a way.
But I mean, if you think about manga, like it's so rarely even like a graphic novel that we might see now.
Yeah.
They're like black and white.
Yeah, that's true.
They're quite like, they were mass printed as far as I'm aware, still are. They've got this very sort of striking look, of course, that incredible sort of stylized visuals, these deep blacks, you know, against the whites, and like the, you know, like amazingly accomplished artists behind them. But I guess just the jump from like black and white on paper to the saturated beauty of how it then looks on screen is incredible.
Oh my God. All that neon. There's a lot of reds, deep reds, right? In this.
I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen a film that has animated light the way that this film does.
I think that's right. I was just thinking that as I was saying it, I was like, it's interesting to pull off neon in something like this, isn't it? You know?
Or even like all those pinpoints of light in a huge office block.
Yeah.
Or obviously one of the most famous, I guess, images, or the most famous image, obviously, is like the sliding bike, like Canada's sliding bike.
Yeah.
You can see incredible supercuts of like all of the homages and parodies that have been done over the years since that. But you get when the biker gangs are racing around Neo Tokyo, those incredible like light streams. It's so iconic, it's so striking, and it's such an incredible way to render like speed and movement on screen. Yeah.
How important is following the plot to you in this movie? You mentioned the first few times you watched it, you didn't really follow it.
No. I don't think it matters at all.
And yet there is so much plot though, right?
There's so much plot.
It is a very plot heavy movie. It's not just a mood movie.
Honestly, like it's an absolute contradiction of itself.
Yeah.
I now relish following the plot in Akira, and it's a little bit like when you figure out what the fuck's going on in Perfect Blue. In Blue Velvet.
Yeah.
Because it feels like an achievement. You go,
You've unlocked it.
I've fucking cracked it.
Yeah.
And I think I've probably only watched Akira like the last 3 times that I've watched it. I've been like, I know exactly what's going on. I know who that person is. I know what their motive is. I know what's happening to this person. But it doesn't mean that I enjoy it more. It just means that I enjoy it in a different way.
Yeah.
When I used to watch it and I found it completely confounding, I'd get to the end of 2 hours and I'd be like, that was brilliant.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, it didn't really matter that I found it hard to follow. I just still really loved just watching it. And like, you're right, like the sound is so good. And so it just feels like this kind of complete experience. And now that I also understand what's going on, I think I just get even more out of it rather than,
Well, that soundtrack, right? Unbelievable.
those like bongs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
How can you make all of the hairs on my body stand up straight with one note?
Yeah.
I don't understand. It's incredible.
Yeah, and again, it's like the soundtrack adds to this feeling of it being a mashup of eras, genres, moods.
Definitely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Because there's a very kind of like 80s bent.
Yes.
But then there's also kind of like very traditional Japanese instruments used. There's that sort of like plinky plonky bit going through it. There are these gongs. There's this incredible like choral part to it. It's like beautifully knitted together with the visuals.
Yeah, it really is. It really that's the. I think especially on first watch, that is the stuff that really knocks you out, isn't it? You know, because it's just like wow, just the look and sound of the experience of watching it. So it begins obviously with that striking image of that massive explosion of Tokyo being leveled essentially in 1988. How much of this movie is, as with so much Japanese cinema, kind of drawing allusions or drawing on imagery of what Japan had been through in the 20th century, do you think?
I mean, yes, it's undeniable.
Yeah.
Absolutely undeniable. I think it's interesting that it's Tokyo.
Yeah.
That they have kind of, you know, with it being the capital city. So obviously it was Hiroshima and Nagasaki that was bombed at the end of World War II. But it's interesting, I think, that they've kind of taken it right home to like the capital.
Yeah.
It's also kind of rooted around stuff to do with like the Olympics is coming up.
Yes.
You know, so you've got like Akira's remains are all kind of like buried.
They're in a big stadium or something.
Yeah, they're like
right?
buried. They're in like a kind of deep freeze, like under one of the Olympic stadiums and stuff. And they seem, I mean, just like I was saying earlier with like anime in general, I think like it's so rooted in Japanese culture, like beyond even the story that they are specifically telling in like this one movie. But yeah, I mean, it's undeniable that obviously it's leaning back into the nuclear attacks on those two cities.
And I suppose the fact that, you know, I suppose 1988 was right at the very end of the Cold War, but the Cold War fears through the 1980s generally, right? We've talked about loads in this series already. The Terminator films, Threads. There was so much of it in the 1980s, this constant fear of a bomb, you know.
And who's going to be more terrified of that than the Japanese?
Exactly.
You know,
yeah.
so.
There's a lot of political not even subtext. There's a lot of political storytelling going on here, right?
Definitely.
The clash between the military and the government, and then there's a kind of the military kind of take over, right? There's a kind of martial law.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in Japanese films seems to lean into kind of the bureaucracy of stuff. You get that sometimes with like Godzilla films and things like
Shin
that.
Godzilla.
Yeah. Oh, Shin Godzilla. Chef's kiss.
So good. There's a bit of kaiju that I got occasionally from this.
Oh,
as
definitely.
Well, you know?
When he basically turns into like a big fleshy monster. And like the absolute destruction that is wrought as well, like after Tetsuo has gone full like body horror tech mecha, really like just rubble, absolute fucking rubble, you know, just like what Godzilla's just been through, you know.
Well, how much does this connect to that theme of kind of science and technology in horror? Because again, there's this interesting element to this story where is it that humans have wrought this upon themselves by experimenting on kids like Akira and Tetsuo? Is that what we're led to believe? It's not just that there are these kids with supernatural abilities and they're going to destroy a city. It's more to do with what the government are doing.
I think so. I don't think Akira and Tetsuo are meant to be like villains.
No.
Tetsuo at the beginning of this film, and you don't get to learn that much about Akira, but when you do then see him in the kind of when he like appears to Tetsuo towards the end of the film. Again, he just looks like this sweet little boy.
Yes.
And you get flashbacks to when all of the little psychic kids were like, it reminds me of Serenity.
Yeah.
What's her name? River. When River's like in this,
in school.
In school.
Yeah.
And they're sort of like, I don't know, moving blocks around with their minds and, and to them at that time, it all seems to just be like a game, right? Like it's just play. And it's absolutely that they have been corrupted by, I guess, scientific hubris and the military wanting to harness powers and
weaponize them almost.
It, probably get energy from it. This is all the stuff that they're always interested in, isn't it? And Tetsuo at the beginning of the film is just like, he's just a kid. He's just a kid who gets into a road traffic accident, essentially, and then turns into a giant
city destroying thing.
Yeah. And then zapped out of existence.
Well, this is interesting because I agree. And, you said he's not really a villain, Tetsuo. Or Akira, they're not really villains. They are kind of victims of this kind of the government control and scientific experiments and people systems of power trying to weaponize them, I suppose, right? But Tetsuo does go on a bit of a journey. I definitely felt midway through the film that it was leaning towards him turning villain, right? Like when his powers are unleashed and he realizes that he's basically unstoppable and he can do whatever he likes, there is this feeling of like Tetsuo was once this bullied kid and now the bullied kid has some power, right? And
I think that's absolutely fair.
There is a bit of that, isn't there?
100%.
He's loving it.
Yeah, no, you're so
He's
right.
loving it.
He is loving it.
Yeah.
And there's also a bit of jealousy and kind of rivalry between him and Kaneda, right?
Yes, exactly.
They were in like the kids' home together when they were little. And Kaneda always seems to have been like Tetsuo's kind of protector. And then later, Tetsuo seems to be like jealous of his motorbike and, sort of saying to him, like, you don't always have to protect me and all of that kind of thing. Like when Kaneda is like always kind of compelled to like try and come to his rescue. And so, you're absolutely right that there's probably some personality stuff going on there that is meaning that he is maybe leaning into the darkness of his power a bit more. But I don't think that he would have been on the verge of like going on a kill crazy rampage before he started getting like drugged by the government.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, but I suppose that's the other interesting thing.
It's like awaken something maybe.
We don't get a whole lot of what is this city... What is this gang culture, right? Like, I would have loved to have found out a bit more about this, like, biker gang that they're a part of. And there's a kind of rival gang as well. And are these supposed to be gangs, like, gangs? Like, are they committing crimes? Are they terrorizing people? We are presumably in a bit of a sort of post-apocalyptic dystopian
it's quite
version
dystopian,
of Tokyo,
isn't it?
Tokyo here, right?
Like,
are they supposed to be like we're in the Warriors, like we're in the Droogs with a Clockwork Orange?
A little bit, maybe. And because you do see them in school briefly, and even then, like, the teachers don't really seem to have a lot of control over them, or any control that they do have just seems to be like physically violent.
Yeah.
They're obviously playing truant a lot.
Right, yeah.
You don't really see them, like, I don't know, robbing places or mugging people or beating up innocent people. It just does seem to be this kind of rivalry between gangs. But then obviously, like, there's going to be kind of collateral damage from that.
Yeah. And again, what do you make of the kind of the people or the way the characters in power are portrayed as well? So you've got the kind of government figures and you've got the guy that's like the big military guy. Right, as well.
I mean, I don't think that they could be more like obviously rendered like who their characters are if they tried. It's like the military man is like a big tall guy with a mustache and a crew cut who just shouts all the time. And then like the bureaucrats are these like, he literally looks like a rodent.
Yeah.
This weird little rodent guy who kind of sweats a bit too much and he's a bit of a mouth breather.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's on the rob, like he's, sort of embezzling funds or like stealing, I don't know, like bonds or something. And he has this like really grotesque death where he basically sort of gives himself an embolism while he's trying to get away.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of like powerlessness and kind of infighting that's portrayed.
Yeah.
You get that big kind of sort of round table meeting of like all of the agencies, the government and the military, and funding's being taken away from here, and you're not doing your job properly, and it's all seems quite sort of like backstabby.
Yeah, I kind of got the impression that essentially all these systems are broken, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's the politicians, the government, the military, even the scientists,
the schools,
religion as well. There is a kind of element of a kind of religious cults in this as well,
exactly.
right? And you've got all these different groups, and they're all just as dangerous as each other, I think.
Literal like terrorism going on in the city.
Yes,
there are bombs going on.
And at the centre of it, you've got these kids who are they're at the centre of it all, being turned into monsters, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So again, there's a kind of generational thing going on here, isn't there, as
Definitely.
well? I think the moment when I was like, holy shit, okay, I'm on board now, is when Tetsuo is in the hospital and suddenly the little toys are like walking up his bed.
Yes.
And I was like, what is happening now?
Yes.
This is getting interesting. That sequence, right? Tell me about your thoughts on these kind of, whatever we want to call them, sort of dream sequences, these visions, I suppose. That they're having, like,
well,
are they like psychic mind walks or something? Like
psychic projections,
I would call them. Yeah.
So basically, you've got like the three little kids, the little old lady and old little man kids, and they are curious, I think, about Tetsuo, who is like a new addition to the creche.
Yeah.
And they basically like come and visit him, but they are projecting these images on top of their actual physical forms. So the little girl is a little bunny rabbit.
Yeah.
And the little boy, I think number 28, who we see at the beginning, is the teddy.
Yeah.
And the little guy in the sort of floating wheelchair. Love him.
Yeah.
In his little suit.
Yeah, what? Yeah.
Why is he in a little suit?
I was so confused because again, they do look like old people,
like adults,
and
but
so
also they've got these little childish voices, and they live in like they play with toys and live in like a little nursery.
But is it supposed to be like they are sort of old people trapped in it? Are they older than they look?
I think they're
children?
probably older than they look, and I think they have probably been through some shit.
Yeah,
like that's the impression that I get, that they have maybe like their bodies have prematurely aged because of like maybe what they've been put through,
or maybe because their brains are so powerful they've like accelerated age or something. Yeah,
but and he's a little car.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, you get this incredible amount. Again, the music in this moment is so good. And they kind of like crawl up the bed sheets at first, and they're like little toddler, like they're sort of like falling over and stuff. It's so cute. And obviously Tetsuo is very freaked out by this because they are making themselves look like this to him.
Yeah.
And he's like,
What's going on?
And then he kind of falls like backwards, treads on a glass, and you get this kind of spray of blood out of his foot. And then because they're little kids, they're like, ew, blood, gross.
Yeah.
Like, we hate you, you're mean. Yeah. And then they all kind of retreat. But then you also get a bit that's a little bit like when all the Power Rangers put themselves together, and then they make like the Mecha Ranger or whatever it's called.
Yes.
Because there's one point where they all smush together, and then they're a giant teddy bear.
The giant teddy bear is quite creepy. This is where it's...
I don't really like it when he starts crying milk. That's weird.
That's when it's weird. Yes, exactly. Well, this is where it does start dipping into horror, right? There is nightmarish, surreal imagery here.
Yeah.
And also, I haven't really mentioned it, but there are bursts of violence too, right? Like you mentioned the kid stepping on the bottle and the blood spraying across the room, but right at the beginning, we're about 10 minutes in and one of the biker kids gets shot to death, right? Mm-hmm. And there's like a lot of blood coming out of him in that moment. So you suddenly go, oh, this is very much an adult
big time
movie.
There's sexual violence.
Yeah.
Tetsuo's girlfriend, she is like attacked by members of the other gang.
Yeah.
Also, have I mentioned yet that they're called the Clown Gang?
The Clown Gang.
I don't like... Is this a horror film? Yes. There is a biker gang in it who ride around sexually assaulting women dressed as clowns.
That's
as horror as it gets for Becky.
I would say so.
So, yeah, and, you know, she gets hit in the face and, you know, her face sort of comes up all swollen and she's got like blood coming out of it. So, yes, I mean, it's definitely like there is some kind of graphic violence. And I think that there's something interesting there, almost coming back to what we were saying earlier about kind of like practical effects or CGI and it being animated. It's like, I don't find that any less shocking or wince-inducing than I would do if that was live action.
No, actually, in some ways it can be worse. There's something about the frame rate, and I don't know too much about the technicalities of this. People can write in and tell me. But there's something about the frame rate of anime, particularly compared to Western animation, where it's like there are less frames per second.
That's exactly right.
And I think there is a certain uncanniness when you get less frames per second, right? It looks judderier at times.
It looks juddery, that's right. It looks like, I don't know, like it's sort of an undercranked camera.
Yes, exactly.
That sort of thing.
Yeah. Almost like you're looking at something stop motion.
Yeah.
You know, in those moments.
And it's kind of slow-mo.
Yeah.
And you sort of follow something as, you know, like say a person will be hit and will fly backwards through the air. The blood will spurt out of them. Obviously, the gravity is kind of pulling that in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And it'll kind of go, but.
Yeah.
As you like sort of follow it.
Yes.
Follow the body, follow the blood in the... Like, it's really... As you say, it's uncanny, it's unsettling. And also it causes me to like linger on the kind of pain and the violence and the sort of spurting blood even more.
And then, of course, there's what happens to Tetsuo at the end, right?
Oh, my.
And again, actually, what would have been a perfect pairing with this movie, now that I've come to think about it, would have been Tetsuo Iron Man. Because he goes Tetsuo Iron Man at the end. Literally, doesn't he? You know?
Yeah.
And again, those scenes are, I mean, they're the really famous ones. Obviously, I'd seen so many images of this stuff, but that is astonishing. Because
what they do is they basically, he's like way too overpowered. And so the military call in the like satellite lasers.
Yeah.
And zap him from space, and they zap his arm off.
Yeah.
But obviously he's still so highly powered that it doesn't kill him.
He grows a new robot arm.
So he basically makes himself a new arm out of bits and bobs.
Yeah.
Grows himself a new robot arm. And then that seems to kick off this kind of metamorphosis where he basically becomes like half biological organic person and half like wires and kind of metal robot, who knows what. There's that incredible bit where he sits, because again, they're sort of down at the Olympic Stadium with those sort of very grand sort of thrones and sort of statues and stuff. And he sits on this sort of big stone throne, and the wires from his arm, as the flesh and the skin and the blood vessels kind of like pulse, the wires from his arm like go into the concrete of the chair. And so it looks like a circuit board or something, right? It's kind of, he's like plugged into this thing.
Yes.
And then as he gets up, the wires kind of come back out of the concrete. And as he just sort of like pulls himself away from it, I'm sorry. How are you doing that? Not him, the animators.
Yeah, it's astonishing.
Unbelievable.
And this is what's so good about this, because I've had this conversation a lot this series about, can you make mechanical things scary in horror? And obviously this film is first and foremost more kind of sci-fi action, of course it is, but you know, this idea of like machines and robots being almost too clean, too sleek to be to work in that kind of uncanny horror way, you know? And I think actually loads and loads of films have proved that wrong. I think even Terminator, the body horror in Terminator, the first one, when he's, you know, digging his eye out and all of that stuff and, you know, opening his arm up. But then actually I think what's really interesting going forward, and we might talk about this even a bit with Perfect Blue, Tetsuo Iron Man, Japanese cinema, and we'll get this more going forward into J-horror, the relationship between people and technology and making that the horror. Right? That almost like kind of transhumanism idea of like melding human flesh with machinery, I suppose.
Exactly that. I think that, you know, coming back to the kind of like mecha idea, if Tetsuo at the end just kind of, I don't know, just transformed into a big robot.
Exactly. Like a Power Rangers type.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not going to be that scary, is it?
No.
The fact that he is this melding of biological matter, human, and the sort of wires and bits of machine. Firstly, and again, I think that this is incredible considering it's animation. It is agonizing to watch. You can feel the pain that he is in.
Yeah.
You know, firstly, like shout out to the voice actors.
Yeah, amazing.
They do a fucking incredible job. But there is something about the way that the flesh is animated and also the way that his like expressions and reactions to what his body is doing is animated. It is agonizing. And that I find terrifying because I just think, fucking hell, this poor kid.
Yeah.
He is basically in hell.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
His head, whenever he sort of, he'll double over, like clutching his head because whatever they've been doing to him, the drugs they've been giving him, whatever they've been fucking zapping him with, whatever they have awakened in his own brain in terms of his abilities, his powers, it's obviously like too much.
Yeah.
And it is so horrible to watch where he will like kind of double over and like scream while he's like clutching his head.
Yeah, exactly.
Horrible.
And that's where the horror is at, isn't it? Is that it's what this human body is being put through in these sections.
And what like they have literally like done to him. And I know that all of that is the more sort of psychic side of things rather than maybe the tech side of things. But what Akira then does as a film is sort of takes it that step further and really like shows you overtly what the scientists have done to his mind and body by literally melding it with machinery. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So finally then, what's going on with the ending? What's going on with the ending? According to Wikipedia's plot synopsis, in an unspecified plane of reality, Tetsuo introduces himself and triggers the creation of a universe transcending the limitations of human existence. Is that the gist of it? Is that what happens at the end?
I mean, I'm just gonna...
He creates this big kind of like singularity event, this moment where there's suddenly like a huge crater. Like a flooded crater in the middle of Neo-Tokyo, right?
Yes.
And then he's gone. And then there's this kind of funny little coda at the end.
Yeah, like, so... They defeat him, but they defeat him because Akira and Tetsuo and the three other little psychic kids all kind of like go together and get sucked off somewhere because like all of their power is too much and like they can only defeat him. They're like, because the first, like number 28, the one, I don't know, love him. And he's like, I'm going to go. And the other two are like, no, don't, you'll die. And he's like, no, I'm going to. And they sort of say, well, if we go too, then we'll all die, but we'll help. Like we'll, you know. So the five of them, all the five psychic kids zap off. So like basically it all just implodes, and somebody says, is this like the birth of the universe?
Right.
As everything kind of like collapses in on itself. And then obviously it's kind of like blue sky and sunbeams and like hope amidst, like as I said earlier, like this untold destruction, like all of this rubble. And Kay and Canada, like Tetsuo is like this tiny little speck of light.
Yeah.
And like, is it a bit like Men in Black? Like, is that the universe?
Yeah.
Like the teeny little, like it's in a marble, like the tiny little, is that the universe? Because you're not telling me that it's like the new universe that's like all around them.
No.
So I think...
But his power has created some sort of new universe within a universe type situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that the 5 little kids, Akira and Tetsuo and Takashi, who's number 28, and then the cute little boy in the suit and the flying wheelchair and the cute little girl. I think they go and live there happily ever after.
In a little psychic universe. Yeah. So, we should mention Akira himself.
Yeah.
Akira, the character. Do we actually see Akira at any point?
We see him as a kind of flash. Like he shows himself to Tetsuo at one point.
Right.
But like literally you see him for about 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And he's just like another cute little Japanese boy.
Yeah. I love that. I had no idea that the title character was not present in this film.
Yeah.
You know?
So he's more of like an idea, a legend.
Yes.
You've got the cult who kind of want him to come back.
Yes.
But obviously, like what happened was his power, a bit like Tetsuo, way back in 1988, his power got too big. They couldn't control him. He levels Tokyo.
Yeah.
And then they've like got him in these like little canisters.
Yes.
This is so fucked up because they've obviously kind of like done vivisection on him.
Yes. They've cut him to bits and put him in jars.
And put him in jars.
Yes.
And I don't know if that is to study him, probably.
Yeah.
Or to make sure that, like, I don't know, if you cut up all his bits, a bit like the judge in Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Keep him separate.
Keep him separate,
Yeah.
and then he can't come back and, like, do it again, I guess.
Also reminds me a bit of Return of the Living Dead, like when they have to, like, remove all the bits from them.
Exactly.
Put them in different bags.
Yeah, put them in different bin bags. They're all, like, moving around.
Yeah.
Love. And that is basically what they've, like, got. They've got him then sort of all in different jars, in like a deep freeze.
Amazing.
To kind of keep him down.
Yeah.
And then you've got the cult who kind of want him to come back. There's always these fucking doomsday cults, isn't there, who always want the actual destruction. I'm not sure they necessarily think about it like sensibly.
Have you thought this through?
Yeah. And then obviously I guess you've got the kind of military scientists who are continuing the research. And the colonel says to the scientist when they first find out that Tetsuo's brainwaves are a bit like Akira's and that his power might be the same, the colonel's like, yeah, but like we're not gonna prod it unless we can control it, right?
Yeah.
And the scientist's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And the colonel's like, all right, sure. And the scientist's like, yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah. And then obviously they prod it. They can't control it. Tetsuo happens. The same thing happens again. And the colonel is so annoyed.
Yeah.
He's like, but you told me that we were going to be able to control it this time. And the scientist's like, well, we didn't.
No. How bad. Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, there you go. Well, I feel like we've only scratched the surface of this film. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we have to move on? Because we've already been going an hour on this film.
God. No, I think that's probably it.
Well, I'm surprised, and I'm not sad about it, but I am surprised that there hasn't been a live action remake of this film, right? In the way that terrible Ghost in the Shell movie happened. I was reading up about it, and Warner Brothers did have the rights to make a live action remake, and then they just never went through with it. I think now the rights have gone from Warner Brothers have lost the rights as of 2025. So it's kind of surprising, pleasantly surprising, I think, right? That this is the only version of this film that exists, you know?
Yeah.
You'd have thought.
You would have thought. Yeah. Oh, God, you know what's going to happen. It's gonna happen like next year now. Now you've said it.
Now that I've said it.
You've ruined it. You've ruined it for everyone.
It's true. And it'll be like Michael Bay or somebody. Or Chris Nolan.
Oh no.
People will be cross that I put those two in the same category just then. Well, there you go. Well, what a movie. And it is going to be one of those movies that stays in my mind, and I will give it a rewatch at some point as well, because I agree with you. It's a movie you need to watch more than once, I'm sure. And I think, again, this is a big question, but in terms of just finishing by talking about its legacy, clearly this movie has a huge legacy, right, of everything that it started and what came in the wake of this through the 90s and beyond, it feels like.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even just sort of coming back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the chat, really, like it proved that animation proved to the West that animation could deliver like adult complex storytelling. Way away from, this kind of assumption that animation was just for kids, and kids films and kids stories and fairy tales. I think even in terms like of beyond cinema, like this, it definitely helped to like popularize cyberpunk, and so that's still something that we're seeing all these years later. It's still a really popular kind of aesthetic and like subgenre. It absolutely, it was the first anime that was picked up by Manga Video in the UK. And so it just opened the door for other like Japanese films to basically reach Western audiences. The permeation of this kind of storytelling, this kind of aesthetic, this kind of action just through other films. So whether it be like anime sections in something like Tarantino's Kill Bill, or basically the entire Matrix franchise. Like this is stuff, that just owes such a huge debt to anime in general.
It's funny. It feels like, for me, you mentioned like it feels like the kind of join between Blade Runner and the Matrix. For sure. It definitely feels that way, that stepping stone.
Yeah, for sure. And then, you said earlier, like, you're going to come on to talk about J-horror. Like, would that have been such a big movement over here if it wasn't for anime and Akira kind of paving the way? Like, it just feels like such a... And, in a million alternate universes, it would have been a different film and fine. But in this universe, it was Akira. And I don't think you can underplay quite how important it was.
Well, there you go. Well, there we go. We should move on. But what a banger.
What a fucking banger.
What a
5
banger.
stars. No notes. Watch it 20 times and you'll get it.
And you'll eventually get it. So we're going on to something quite different, actually. Different vibe, different type of, different kind of horror, right? We're going to jump forward nearly a decade to Perfect Blue from 1997. What a movie. Becky, set the scene for us.
There is a young woman called Mima who is a pop idol.
She is.
But Mima wants to break out of the music industry and become an actress.
Yes.
And so at the beginning of the film, she kind of makes this announcement that this is going to be her last concert. And then we follow kind of the beginning of her acting career on a TV show. At the same time, she's got a kind of stalker. So we see this guy called Me-Mania, is his kind of like handle, I suppose.
Me-Mania.
Mike.
He is horrible.
He is so horrible. I don't like the way he looks at all. Why are his eyes so far apart?
His eyes are so... And they're really small.
And they're like, empty, disgusting. And I don't like his mouth. And it's horrible. He's gross. Anyway, he is kind of stalking her, and you get him sort of, in the background a lot. She's always sort of spying him, like following
he pops
her on
up
the
everywhere.
Subway, at her work and things. He runs this website called Mima's Room.
Yeah.
And what appears to be happening is that he is posing as Mima on this site kind of journaling about her day, and she realizes as she becomes aware of this site and is reading the posts, like, this is literally my life. Like, whoever is writing this knows, like, intimately what I'm doing with my time, where I have been, even like inside her head and her thoughts. There are also some threatening kind of mail, like kind of fan mail things going on. There's a letter bomb. There's people sending her faxes calling her a traitor because she's not in the group anymore and she wants to do something else. And there are murders. So the screenwriter who wrote a particularly challenging part of her role, where she is raped on camera by, like, in the show
by like a group of men,
as she's kind of doing like a kind of striptease, and also a photographer who takes some kind of suggestive nude pictures of her, like, for a magazine. They start turning up dead, and you start to think, like, is this the stalker? Is it maybe somebody, like, on her team? Or is it this sort of weird reflection / projection of Mima's internal desire to want to return to being a pop idol? Because she starts having these visions of basically herself in her old costume, this evil little version of herself who is, like, calling her a failure and a little whore, and saying, like, oh, but you don't need to worry about that because I'm in control now, and I'm going to be an idol now. And she starts starting to, like, hallucinate and essentially, like, lose her mind and unravel as all of these people seem out to get her, and it all gets very confusing in a very Japanese kind of way.
Absolutely. So there's what is astonishing about this film is that this is just as jam-packed in a lot of ways with how many themes it's covering. Like, even you describing all those different elements of that plot. We've got a serial killer, we've got a fractured psyche, we've got a stalker, we've got kind of internet horror, we've got commentary on kind of the treatment of women in Hollywood. We've got, like, a kind of commentary on J-pop and manufactured pop stars, right?
Toxic fandom.
It does so much in about 80 minutes.
Unbelievable.
And it does it perfectly, right? This is one of the most astonishing films I've ever seen in how, like, simple and stripped back it is, and yet how, like, dense it is with ideas, right? It's unbelievable, I think. So
you said earlier that this episode is the first time you've covered anime on the podcast, and we do a lot of screenings together under the EOH arm, go all around the country. Love it. It's one of my favorite things to do.
It's the best. I
had been begging you for a couple of years of us doing this, please can we show some anime?
Yes.
And you kept sort of going,
sure.
Nerd. Under your breath. And then we were invited to the Birmingham Anime Festival.
Yes.
And we showed Perfect Blue.
We did.
And I was very exciting.
And I, again, because I'm so uncultured in the ways of anime,
swine,
had never seen Perfect Blue.
No.
And so I was like, right, well, I'm going to have to make sure I watch it ahead of the screening and then watch it again at the screening, get all my thoughts.
Because we're going to have to talk about it afterwards.
We're going to do some research. We're going to talk about it on stage and everything. And I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit like, it's going to feel like work. It's going to feel like work to watch this movie. And I texted you immediately after it had finished, after I watched it the first time at home on Blu-ray. And I was like, holy fucking shit. That is the anime film that I have always wanted to see. Like, I loved everything about it. And I've now watched it 3 times. And it is 5 stars, zero notes.
Not one note.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah.
And I can't believe how ahead of its time it is in so many ways. I can't believe how many movies owe a debt. I mean, Darren Aronofsky owes his whole career to this movie, right? He really does.
Basically, yeah.
He really does. This is
Basically,
Black Swan. There are moments of Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah.
Like direct images that he's stolen from this movie.
Stolen.
Well, okay, fine. But like the screaming girl in the bathwater, that is Requiem for a Dream.
The mirror.
The mirror stuff is Black Swan through and through, isn't it? It is unbelievable. And then also, and we'll talk about this more as we go, this is a kind of really interesting gateway into so much of the stuff I'm going to cover for the rest of this series, which is kind of tech and internet horror. And this also feels like a kind of prelude to the J-horror movement, to movies like Pulse and all the others, One Missed Call, even Ring to an extent. These kind of like strange ghost stories or psychological horrors that are linked to technology and the internet or TVs and all of that kind of stuff that, again, Japanese do so well.
Yeah.
It's all in this little 80-minute animated film.
Ridiculous.
Amazing, right?
Ridiculous. This was one of the ones, because it's so different to Akira. And I guess this is really such a perfect illustration of the point that we made earlier in our chat, which was anime isn't a genre, it's a medium, right? So what we're basically covering in this episode with these two films is you've got Akira, which is like a cyberpunk kind of post-apocalyptic, futuristic tech body horror.
Yeah.
For want of better adjectives. And this is like Perfect Blue is much more kind of a psychological thriller. It's much more rooted in like reality.
Yeah, completely.
And it's much more kind of internal rather than external.
Yes, much more.
With its focus.
It's much more human, and it's a much smaller story, smaller scale story. Yeah.
And it's much more of a feminine story.
Yes.
Importantly for me, because Akira, as I said at the beginning, Akira, Ghost in the Shell, Ninja Scroll, and Perfect Blue were like my sort of and Blood the Last Vampire. So I had like a hard rotation of like 5 anime on VHS, and Perfect Blue was like the one that you would like pop on at a sleepover.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course.
Because
I can imagine.
It's like, it's female, it's lovely and short.
Yeah.
It's got these very kind of striking images, but that feel... It's not just huge kind of cityscapes and stuff. No. It's like her in her like bedroom.
Totally.
Or, her sort of making herself like a little meal, or like talking to her mum on the phone and
exactly,
stuff.
Yeah.
And then obviously being a fucked up little nutter like I was, it's also got all of that like absolutely horrifying stuff kind of laced through it. But this feels like a teenage girl film, and that is very much when I kind of connected with it.
Of course, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Why don't we start by talking about the look and the animation then in comparison to Akira, because it is so different, isn't it? It's much more sort of washed out, I would say. It doesn't have that striking colour, that neon, all that other stuff we talked about with Akira.
It is much more washed out.
Yeah.
And it's interesting what you said earlier about, like, we're here in 3D. Hello, I can see you. Yeah. And we're talking about like 2D animation. But to me, Perfect Blue feels much more 2D than Akira does.
Yeah,
It's got a bit more of a flatness to it.
Absolutely.
For sure. Even in like people's faces.
Yeah.
Which it's a beautiful film, but the people in it are fucking ugly. Like
they are,
but like there's something that Satoshi Kon is leaning into in terms of like a real kind of monstrousness of the human condition with this film, and all of that is just like written over their faces like me mania.
Well, I wonder if it's that thing as well of like, I've talked about this a lot when I've done talks on what is horror, and I use examples of when I talk about the uncanny of like the Sonic the Hedgehog trailer that went wrong. Right,
we don't like his human teeth.
We don't like the teeth, and we don't like the smaller eyes, right? And there's something about animation that feels warm and cuddly when we give people bigger eyes and more accentuated features, right?
I mean, think about that now very memed moment in Puss in Boots where he clutches his little hat
exactly.
and his eyes are like enormous,
yeah.
AKA the cutest thing you'll ever see.
Exactly.
Right?
And you've talked about this already, about how anime typically has the kind of bigger eyes. And this movie doesn't have that quite so much. And there is something slightly more uncanny valley about the way they portray human faces in this.
I think that's really true.
And this is what's so clever about this film, is that also links in with all these blurred, fractured identities and people dressing up as other people, or people looking at each other's reflections or images on computer screens and all of that kind of thing. Big
time.
It's
and
very
also
clever.
like a comment maybe on this whole like public private persona, the masks you put on, what somebody will look like. So say you're a celebrity, what you look like if you're just walking down to the corner shop to get a cornetto,
exactly,
or probably like a box of Pocky, I would imagine, in Tokyo. What you look like when you're on stage or in front of a camera.
Totally.
Right. So again, there's this kind of disconnect all the way through it, like what she looks like in the nude photos to what she looks like when she's just
feeding a goldfish in her flat. Yeah.
Oh,
the poor goldfish. It reminds me of Willow Rosenberg.
Yeah, 100%. She finds them in the envelope. Oh God.
Yeah, and I love it. So I think that is really interesting too, that even the animation brings a sense of like unease and paranoia compared to Akira, which is much more like you're marveling at the scope and spectacle of it,
100%. And there's so much kind of like, I think Akira is very highly detailed. We've already talked about stuff like, the pinpoint lights, in the the cityscapes, but even down to, I don't know, when they're in the bar, the stuff that's all kind of behind the bar is all very, very detailed. Like even like down to a kind of number plate or the stickers like on the bikes and stuff. This feels much more simple. And there's less of a kind of like expansive imagery and much more kind of like, and this is sort of leaning into this like sort of paranoia and more kind of introspective vibe of the film, is like there's a lot of kind of close-ups.
Yeah, a lot of close-ups.
So it's not just following kind of motorbikes, down a street. It's like you are in her face as she's
very
walking
internal.
down the street.
Those moments when she's on set and you've got a big bustling film set with people walking around and people having conversations and lights and cameras, but it's
completely
her
still
practicing
on her practicing her line. The one line. Her one line. Oh God.
And she's all by herself as well.
I know.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's astonishing, all that stuff. Satoshi Kon, again, I'm not really familiar with his other work, and I really should check out his other work, considering how much I love Perfect Blue.
God.
Tokyo Godfathers, Paprika, right? Are you a fan of his work generally?
Love.
Yeah.
Love.
Is it similar vibes, his others, to this? Is it? Do you think I would like his other stuff?
So, especially considering the fact that you love the bit with the teddy bear and the bunny rabbit and the car in Akira, Paprika is very that, but for like an entire movie.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Tokyo Godfathers is one of the best Christmas films of all time.
Oh, right. Christmas film. Okay.
It is basically telling the story of the Nativity through 3 homeless trans women who find a baby, and I just loved it so much. It's so beautiful, it's fucking hilarious. Cool. Like I think that Satoshi Kon, like there isn't a huge amount to laugh about in Perfect Blue.
No.
Tokyo Godfather really leans into like the kind of, well, very much that kind of like sort of trans humor, but also kind of like the more drag queen element, like the camper element to at least one of the characters.
Sounds a bit like Tangerine, actually. Sean Baker's Tangerine. Yeah.
It kind of is like Tangerine.
Yeah.
And yes, I think you would fucking love it.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Let's, I reckon at least at Christmas, let's watch Tokyo Godfathers.
Let's do it. So his stuff then, I would surmise, based on what you've just said, he's telling much more human
big time.
stories, like internal psychological human states as
100%.
stories. Yeah.
Even when it does become kind of a bit more kind of skewed and fantastical, it definitely feels much more rooted in the human. He doesn't like rely on kind of spectacle as much.
Yeah.
There's an element of that to, I'd say, the aesthetic of his films, but maybe not the like narrative, which I really love.
Yeah.
So you're right, he's telling these much more human stories, but because of the medium that he's telling them in, they still look fucking incredible. So you still get that kind of magical realism element to a lot of it. I mean, it's amazing. And very intimate, intellectual, and often with this kind of like slightly off-kilter kind of like unsettling vibe.
Well, a lot from reading a bit about him, a lot of people made David Lynch comparisons, and I guess to Perfect Blue too. A lot of people describe Perfect Blue as Lynchian.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Probably another reason why I loved this movie. Right? It's very much my jam, and this was before Mulholland Drive, but there are a lot of connections with Mulholland Drive, I would say.
Honestly, without a doubt, that kind of like dream logic, fractured identities.
Film sets, Hollywood, playing a role, all of that
shifts
stuff.
between like inner worlds and outer worlds, big time. Yeah, do you know what? It does really make sense why you really like it.
Yeah. It ticks all my boxes, doesn't it? It does. And when did you become familiar with this? Because 1997, you mentioned in the first section, by this point, anime was much more of a thing, wasn't it? Like in the West, I mean, it was much more of a thing. Like people were much more familiar with Japanese cinema and Japanese animation and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think... I'm not 100% sure, but by the time, like I was saying earlier, like Akira was released in Japan in 88. I think it came out in the UK on VHS in 91. So there was maybe like a 3-year gap.
Yeah.
When Ghost in the Shell was released, that was 95.
Yeah.
And it got like a UK release through Manga Entertainment in 95,
right?
Like late 95, early 96. And so what you were starting to get was much more of this,
immediate. Yeah,
exactly. This appetite, this appetite to have it like now, please.
Yeah.
So I guess because I was already aware of some of the other films, sort of in this collection. I reckon I probably saw this maybe 97, 98. So I would have been, again, like just the perfect age for it, like 15, 16.
Perfect, yeah. It was, this is something, funnily enough, I talked about a lot with James Payne on the podcast we made together about 90s kids shows, Zap to the Future,
which I loved.
Thank you. It was really fun to do. And we actually talked a lot about the influence in the early 90s of Japanese culture on kids' television. So whether it was Power Rangers, whether it was a lot of the Saturday morning cartoons,
Big time.
It was
Jason the Wheeled Warriors.
Exactly.
My personal fave.
And James, who is a massive anime fan, said he got into that as a child in his childhood through the 90s via stuff like that then, as a result of which he sought out, whatever, Akira and all these other things, and
started banging on about Paprika.
Started banging on. Oh my God, yeah, I know. Yeah, I've dipping into his Evangelion box set or whatever the fuck.
Too right. Where's James? So I should be having this chat with him.
James should have been doing this one.
Come on, James.
I'm pretty sure Journey Through Sci-Fi, I think they've covered Paprika and Perfect Blue and Akira, so there's a lot of anime content out there on their podcast. But yeah, I think all of that's really interesting. So anime had come a long way in the decade between Akira and this,
definitely.
Again, in the West. Yeah,
it definitely had. And I think both in terms of, I mean, this is another argument, and I don't deal particularly well / I'm particularly interested in hypotheticals, but everybody loves a thought experiment, right? And I wonder if Perfect Blue, and this is not me throwing any shade at this film because I adore it, but if Perfect Blue had been the first film to be released by Manga Video in the UK, with it being this much more internal, intimate, little psychological horror story. Feminine.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
The flatter animation, etc. Would we then have come on to have like such a huge explosion of interest?
I don't think so.
I think there's something about it being Akira.
Agreed.
And the style and the themes and the kind of explosive nature of it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
But what did happen is by the time Perfect Blue came along in 97, I think that the appetite for anime and for animation being a medium for adult entertainment and complex storytelling, we were already there.
Yeah.
Right? We were ready for it.
Yeah.
So when Perfect Blue came along in 97, you go, holy shit,
Yeah.
this is incredible. But I think if it had been the other way around,
Yeah.
we might not have fell in love with it as much.
I agree because again, I'm not comparing Saturday morning American kids TV shows to Akira, but I actually think Akira is the reason I think that a lot of those 90s
Like what?
well, shows like X-Men the animated series, Gargoyles, even Batman the animated series, like a lot of those kind of really popular animated shows from the 90s, either all the way through to the 2000s and Teen Titans and all of that kind of thing, they all, I think, owe a debt to anime, to Japanese animation, but I think also to Akira, you know?
Even, I would say, stuff like Ren and Stimpy.
Yes, exactly.
There is something about the that fucking weird animation that Ren and Stimpy
Nickelodeon
does.
animation,
Nickelodeon animation,
Yeah.
where you get all the just sort of like normal flat zoomed out shit, and then you get those weird fucking close-ups where it's all like hyper realistic and like super detailed.
Bloodshot eyeballs and stuff.
But they've all got huge screaming mouths and
Yeah.
big buggy eyes,
Yeah.
and they're all screaming each other's names the whole time, like
Yeah.
Tetsuo,
Yeah.
Canada, like all of this stuff,
Yeah.
right? It's all the same thing, and
Absolutely.
you're so right. Like it basically paved the way and threw open the door for what basically became 90s kids entertainment.
Yeah.
But also it gave adults the appetite for being able to, I think, engage with and enjoy more complex storytelling about fractured psyches and toxic fandom that is still rendered in animation.
Completely. And it's so interesting, all the crossovers and the way in which the Japanese culture permeates it. I mean, it also crosses over, obviously, into video games too. Sonic and Mario came from Japan, right? And so there was so much of kids' culture in the early 90s that owed a debt to stuff that originated in Japan.
Nintendo is all Japanese.
Exactly. Yeah,
Street
Nintendo,
Fighter,
Sega,
like everything.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
This is an art attack.
It's Morphin' time!
This is an art attack.
Who's ready? Who loves orange sun?
To me.
This is Incredible Games!
If you enjoy a bit of talk about 90s nostalgia, about Saturday morning cartoons, about video games, about anime, all the topics that Becky and I have just been discussing, then you might like another podcast I made called Zap to the Future. This is a podcast that I produced and co-hosted with my dear friend James Payne. We grew up together in the 90s, and we made a podcast all about the TV shows that we watched growing up. From Saturday morning cartoons to Nickelodeon to British game shows to gladiators to weird stuff like the Riddlers and various other genres and types of media that were on offer to kids in the 90s. What a time. It's just a limited series. It's 10 episodes, and in each episode James and I tackle a different type of program, a different subgenre of 90s kids TV. It's called Zap to the Future. That's Zap with 3 Zs because of the TV show Zap, and you can find that wherever wherever you get your podcasts. So anyway, so all of that is kind of interesting as backdrop, but let's get back to Perfect Blue. I guess, like I said at the beginning, there are so many themes that this movie touches upon. Let's start where it starts at the beginning, which is Mima as a pop star, right? As a pop idol. That is really interesting. And again, that
I don't
feels
like it. It weirds me out.
It's weird, isn't it? And this is something that feels prescient from 1997. I mean, it's not really, because it was already very present through the 90s, but the treatment of pop stars and manufactured pop groups and pop star fandom, right? Already you get a glimpse of that from the very beginning. In fact, I think it's interesting that like it begins with what looks like these kind of Power Rangers.
It's the Power Rangers, basically, yeah, isn't it?
And then we get this concert and we're introduced to, Mima, her pop stars, and the creepy Meme Mania character. That image of him with his he's holding that is such a beautifully creepy image where he's holding his hand outstretched in front of him, and then we get a shot of his point of view, and like with perspective it looks like she's in the palm of his hand, right?
She's dancing on his hand, yeah,
like he owns her. Horrible, right? But sort of J-pop idols clearly were already a massive thing at this point, right? In the 90s.
Like idol culture, it was like a big thing in the 90s.
Yeah.
I don't know when exactly it started, but like at this point that this film was being made, it was huge.
Yes.
And it's exactly like you say, it's like highly commercialized. It's all built around young performers. And, like it's still a thing now, like Blackpink and BTS and all that.
Well,
like the K-pop.
I suppose, yes. K-pop has become much more of a thing in recent years.
It has.
Yeah.
But it's so rooted in Japan, I think.
Yeah.
Usually teenage girls.
Yes.
And they are like, the thing is like we were saying earlier with this like public private perception of people. The whole point about pop idols is they have to be like perfect, innocent, approachable. There's so much of the industry around it that is about like meet and greets. And so you get these men. They're men. Usually, I would say like 90. I'm not. This is a stat I am making up, but I would say 99%.
Well, yes, I imagine it to be either teenage girls or grown men as the fans of these sorts of groups.
I mean, there's something really wrong there, isn't there?
Well, there is.
Otaku is like the Japanese term for like nerd. But like it's a specific meaning of nerd, all consuming interest in something, right? So like you make it your whole personality and your entire life, and you spend all your money on it and all your time on it. And this is what you get with these idols who are usually young girls who prance around on stage, jumping up and down in little skirts and singing in little baby voices.
Yeah, quite infantilized.
Really infantilized. A lot of otaku culture leans into that kind of like infantilization of women. I mean, you mentioned video games just now. Like you think about some of the way that female video game characters are designed, especially again back in the 90s before there was a bit of a pushback against like all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, like I mean it's what are the ones over here? Like it's like the X Factor.
Yeah.
But like on an absolutely industrial scale.
Yeah.
And there is this, I think the thing that is most disturbing is this kind of intimate personal aspect to it, where these fucking greasy, sweaty, neck bearded mouth breathers get to come up and like have their photos taken and breathe all over them and have their,
horrible, isn't it?
their I don't know, their CDs signed or whatever.
Yeah. Well, this is it. And again, this is another way in which this film feels so ahead of its time, is that Meme Mania is an early example of the kind of the keyboard warrior, right? He's the kind of incel, he's the incel
God,
internet keyboard warrior.
He is.
And this is super early, obviously, in the kind of evolution of the internet being in people's homes, or at least the World Wide Web, right?
Yeah.
So the World Wide Web, created by Tim Berners-Lee, kind of started in 1989. It didn't really become a thing where, public access was available until 1993, 94. That's when the kind of the establishment of internet browsers and that kind of thing became a thing. And then it wasn't really until around 95, 96 that people, just general homes, families were able to afford to have the internet in their home connected to a modem.
Can I just spend like 5 minutes giving you some quick fire questions about your experience with the internet, please?
Please, yeah.
Because you're 5 years younger than me.
Yes.
I was, before I start questioning you, I'll just give you my context. I was about 14 or 15 when I first got access to the internet in the home. The first website I ever visited was bubblewrap.com.
Amazing.
Because in Sugar magazine, they used to have like website of the week or whatever. And it was the issue that came and sort of coincided with me getting home access to the internet. Website of the week was bubblewrap.com. And you just went on and it was just a sheet of bubble wrap that you could pop with your mouse. And you could either do them individually or you could hold and drag and click and drag. And
satisfying.
Oh, it was satisfying.
Yeah.
I loved it. First ever website I went on. Okay,
I love
so
that.
how old were you when you first got the internet in your house?
Yeah, I think it would have been about the same. I think my dad had it because my dad was, worked in computers. He had it quite early. I would say probably about 1996.
Okay.
So I would have been about 9.
You were slightly younger.
I wasn't allowed on it. My dad didn't let me go on the internet when we first got it.
Very wise.
Very
We
wise.
know what you're like.
I was straight on the smut.
Yeah.
Don't ask me what my first website was. It wasn't Bubble Wrap. I remember very vividly in 1999, I was 12, I was 12. And I got given, and that was the year I started secondary school, and I was given my first computer in my room. And
Fucking hell, that is bold for a 12-year-old.
I know. And with connection to the internet.
Wow.
As well. And so that was the really exciting. And I think we had all kinds of parental controls on that. My dad could monitor what I couldn't do. But it was the most exciting thing ever. And do you know what I remember mainly doing at that point was going on like Buffy forums.
Right. This is going to be one of my questions. Did you do like forums and what were they called? Chat rooms and stuff?
Did chat rooms. I did MSN chat and then MSN Messenger.
Oh, MSN Messenger. Excuse me.
I think AOL chat rooms I went on a couple of times as well. And yes, but the main thing, because I was so into film and TV and I was a burgeoning horror fan, the things I really remember was going on early kind of horror blogs and websites and like reading reviews of fucked up movies that I'd never seen or heard of, like Evil Dead and stuff, So for me, the internet kind of, that was what opened up my world into kind of film culture, I think. As
That's
it probably was for
fucking
so many
amazing.
people, to be honest.
I was completely oblivious to things like forums and chat rooms and stuff. And I've only now like learned that they were a thing through like talking to other people who were massive nerds and were like on them as like moderators and stuff back in the day. I'm like, where was this in my life when I needed it, when I didn't have any friends to talk to about this stuff? What was your first ever email address, please?
Oh, Mike Muncer at hotmail.com.
No.
The classic. Back when you could get a hotmail.com email address.
my
and
God.
just Mike Muncer at hotmail.com. Lovely and simple.
Mine was Lycos.
Oh, yeah, I remember Lycos.
I did Lycos. Yeah.
Back in the day, it was either Yahoo or Lycos. They were your
Yahoo,
mates.
yeah, that's
Ask
right.
Jeeves.
Yeah, we were on AOL initially. And just that whole like dial-up tone, obviously.
Yeah.
And then, if you downloaded any photo or something, it would take like 25 minutes
Yes.
of it loading like one pixel line at a time while you're waiting for it to come down.
And also, this is the thing, and linking it back to horror, the internet, I remember even then seeming quite scary. 1999 was obviously when the Blair Witch campaign was about as well. There were kind of emerging kind of creepy pasta type things, whether it be photos or stories on forums.
And it was just immediately, don't fucking talk to anybody because they're all...
Don't talk to strangers.
They're all pretend... It's all idol fans.
Me-mania.
Exactly. It's all me-mania. It's all the weirdos pretending to be teenage girls.
Yeah.
And getting you to go and meet them in the park and, steal your knickers or whatever.
Exactly. Like actually genuinely a place of danger, a place where predators lurk,
Big
of course.
time. And just like that terrifying anonymity of it.
Yeah.
Just not knowing who you were speaking to.
Yeah, exactly. And that was all there. And also websites. Oh, horrible websites. This was probably when I was a little bit older.
Rotten.com. Rotten.com.
And again, as a teenage boy, of course, I was all over that sort of stuff.
Mate, as a teenage girl.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you can see Kurt Cobain's, like the police photos of Kurt Cobain after he blew his head off.
Yeah.
Like, okay, oh yeah, great.
Yeah.
Type that into the search.
Yeah.
Fucking
Mental,
hell.
isn't it? Mental.
Log on and see dead bodies of people you've heard of.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Horrible. Absolutely horrible. So the internet was terrifying. And
From day one.
From day one, as Perfect Blue basically demonstrates in 1997, right? And there's so many cute, quaint conversations where characters have to explain to Mima what the internet is, right? And how to get logged online. There's a moment where she types in an HTML and she's like, I'm getting pretty good at this.
Yeah.
I can do,
They've literally like unboxed her Macintosh computer.
But so again, there are some ways in which this feels dated and quaint, but then in other ways it's like, well, nothing's changed. That toxic fandom online, the people, the creepy men, and the way they treat young girls, it's all here in this, isn't it? Again, this movie is so prescient. I find it's so interesting.
It's so ahead of its time, like thematically.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah,
and the way in which, and obviously that links into Mima kind of starting to lose her sense of self and identity. And that is kind of linked in with this idea of the internet and the internet presence that she has. And that people are pretending to be her. Exactly. Stealing her identity. It's a bit like that movie Cam, which we're going to cover at the end of the series.
Oh, are you?
Yeah. But there's similarities, right? There's a parallel, I think.
Absolutely is.
Yeah.
There's also, I know that this doesn't specifically happen in the film, but there is a sense that the next thing that might have happened to her was she would be doxxed.
Yes.
Because he's following her around.
Yeah.
He knows like the most intimate details of what she bought at the shop, what foot she puts down on the platform first as she gets off of the subway, like this sort of stuff. Like, it doesn't feel like a million miles away that, her address and stuff could be put up on the site. And I mean, it's fucking scary.
Really scary. So she's made this shift from pop idol to actress. A lot of the fans are upset and cross about this, obviously, and it's quite damning on the sort of film and TV industry, isn't it, this film, and the way she's treated. Everything from how lonely and isolated she is when she's on set to the rape scene that she has to film. Although I suppose the rape scene is really interesting. We should talk about that scene because, yes, it's horrible and there's something about it that feels deeply uncomfortable that this actress has to do this. But then actually, whilst filming it, you get that little moment where the actor sort of apologizes to her.
It's actually such a moment of relief, I think.
Yeah.
For the audience, well, for her, but for the audience as well, because not only do you realize that she is safe in this moment beyond what you think is happening.
Yeah.
Because this is the other thing that the film keeps doing is it will show her being like followed down the street by like a creepy guy saying, hey, are you a model? Yeah. Hey, don't walk away from me. Like, you should be a model. And you're going, oh, fucking hell, Mima. Like, this is awful. And then it'll jump back and like, as in like behind the cameras. And it'll be like, oh no, this is part of TV show that she's filming. Right. And so it's constantly playing with what are not only the reality of what she is experiencing, but what we're experiencing as an audience. Because you are thinking, oh God, I'm watching Mima in this situation. That's uncomfortable. And then you realize, oh no, actually that's the part that she's playing, because now we're behind the cameras and we can see that, or somebody will call cut. Yeah. And that's kind of what you have been conditioned to feel by the time you get to the rape scene.
Yes.
So even though you have seen the conversation where she gets the script and agrees to do it, then the way that it is framed makes it look like Mima is being raped to a certain degree. And especially like the way that it's just performed, I guess, by the actors on set in this film.
Yeah.
And then what it does is it undercuts that tension because, and it's such a relief, because he says to her, you're right, like, I'm really sorry. And she goes, it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. And then it's like action and everyone starts braying and he's, humping at her again. Horrible.
It's a horrible scene.
It's horrendous. And then what you do get, and this is one of the most upsetting moments for me in the film, is when she then gets home, she's like, oh, I'm so exhausted. Like, oh no, I'm just going to, I think her, one of her agents says, like, I'm going to take you out for a really nice meal. Like, you've earned it today. And then she finally gets home. It's like late at night. She goes to feed her fish and they're all dead.
Yeah.
And she fucking
breaks.
Loses it. Smashes a load of stuff up, tears her posters all down off the wall. And she says, like, of course I didn't, like, out loud, like, of course I didn't want to do it, but I thought I had to because I couldn't let people down.
Yeah, it's really sad.
It's so sad. And again, like, it's asking these questions about not only the way that people look in front of the camera as opposed to how they look if they're just down the shops, not only about like people's perceptions of themselves versus other people's perceptions of them, but also this like very real thing that actors and actresses have to reckon with, I assume, on a daily basis, which is, if I don't say yes to this thing, I will be perceived as difficult.
Yes.
As not committed enough.
Yeah.
Not like unprofessional.
Yeah.
And so again, it's shining this light on this idea of perception and how we see ourselves and what we're comfortable doing, but what we will actually agree to make sure that we're perceived in a certain way by somebody else. Completely.
And again, it's about 20 years ahead of the curve with reckoning with that stuff. The Me Too movement, intimacy coordinators, that idea of safety for women and girls on sets that really only in the last decade people have been reckoning with, right? And so many stories have since come out of things that have happened in the past to actresses, of course. And it's like, again, this movie, it's pretty astonishing that it was dealing so overtly with it here, Yeah. It is amazing.
I think it's one of the reasons that moment when the actor's really nice to her in that scene, it does feel like such a relief, because we are aware of real life stories like Last Tango in Paris, for example.
Yeah.
Or even that horrendous story with Marilyn Manson and Evan Rachel Wood. Where like people are literally on set and watching somebody being sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
And either don't realise or don't feel comfortable doing anything about it.
Yeah. It also really taps into the 90s zeitgeist of like the serial killer thriller, doesn't it, as well? This is the decade, obviously, of like Silence of the Lambs and Seven and X-Files and FBI agents and crime and all of that stuff, which again, this film almost feels like it's commenting on actively as it goes.
There's so much about Perfect Blue that it feels like art imitating life, imitating life. That is amazing. And the serial killer stuff, I think that, true crime, which has always been a thing, but I think that was like starting to...
after OJ, that became a thing,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So, and it's, it is a pretty... It's funny because the serial killer element, as you said earlier, is like one element amongst many in this film. But I think it actually does it really well. Like, you don't know who it is until right at the end.
It's really good. It's happening. It's a bit like Don't Look Now. It's like a serial killer thriller happening in the background,
Exactly
almost,
that.
isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly that.
In the background of this very psychological, internal story.
And also, there's something almost like giallo about this film in terms of its like story structure.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, actually, with the killer reveal and the costume. And yeah, I agree.
And I think it does that really well. Like, it doesn't distract from anything else. And obviously, it kind of fits in quite nicely, like tonally, with the more like psychological side of the narrative. But at the same time, it's like these people keep turning up dead, and it will be like a really fucking creepy moment where her like hit song from the Idol band will be playing like on a kind of 90s tape deck.
Yeah.
in an elevator, and the screenwriter like follows it in, and then the elevator like dings and the doors open, and he's just like dead on the floor.
How do you find the horror? We talked about those kind of weird bursts of surreal horror or even gore or body horror in Akira. How do you find the kind of the on-screen horror in Perfect Blue?
Like, just as effective, I think. What is it about anime blood that is
it's weird, isn't it?
It's so horrible.
Yeah.
But like, I think one of the most disturbing images of the film is when Me Mania gets into a fight with the other fans at the concert, and he gets like his nose broken. He's got blood coming all down his face, and he just like looks at her and smiles. This like, lopsided, absolutely fucking manic smile. While he's got blood like dripping from his nose and off of his chin. Oh my God.
You really hate this guy's face, don't you?
I hate it. And then like one of the most famous images from the film is right at the end when you find out that it's Rumi, her agent, has been kind of behind everything. She's the true villain, and she is dressed as Mima in her kind of idol days, and she sort of holds her hand up to her face, and she's just got blood like pouring in like rivulets down her face. Unreal. It's it's fucking scary.
Well, let's talk about Rumi then. What do you make of Rumi and then that reveal that she turns out to be the killer?
I think it's great.
She's kind of her sort of the closest thing she has to like a guardian in this film, isn't she? And so there's something so sad about it, really. But
it's really sad.
Yeah.
And there's, again, I think even with Rumi and the fact that she has clearly been pushed off the deep end, is that she was an idol herself.
Yeah, that's
right?
interesting. Yeah.
So she has, I assume, like footballers, you age out of it, right?
Completely.
So you can only be an idol for so long.
And then you become a manager.
And then you become
30.
a manager.
Yeah.
Because I assume all the old pervs aren't interested once you hit perimenopause. Who knows?
Well,
anyway.
totally. And again, the film does this, not in a horrible way, but she doesn't have the same body shape as the young girls, right?
Nope.
She looks like a woman of an older age.
Yeah.
Literally, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that they are leaning into that, like not in a kind of fat shamey way at all, because it's never mentioned, but they have made a choice. And this is the other thing with animation, right? Is literally everything is a choice,
It's
because
deliberate,
it is being drawn. It is being chosen and drawn. So they have made a choice to make her with a slightly fuller figure.
Yes.
As you say, like an older woman's figure rather than these stick thin little teenagers.
Yes.
Bouncing around all over the stage. And she has obviously been sort of spat out the other side of the system.
Yeah.
And when she then becomes an agent or a manager or a guardian to a new, younger idol, when the idol wants to then break away from that part of her career and do something else, it seems to switch something in Rumi, right? So I don't know if it's like she's triggered, right? She is triggered.
She's triggered. Yeah.
And it sort of tips her over the deep end, I think. But I think you're probably meant to believe that it's kind of been there already, but that it may be seeded in the trauma of having lived the life of an idol for...
Well, that's it. It doesn't... Again, it's so interesting.
You have to read into that. It's not overt.
No, I think that's so interesting, though, but it's so nuanced because she's not... Even at the end, it doesn't feel like she's just this like, haha, I was the killer, I'm a villain. Like, it doesn't feel like that at all.
It's sad.
It's sad.
There's a sadness to it.
And all the way through the film, she really cares, right? The moment when Mina's filming the rape scene and she's just in floods of tears.
And literally like, has to like get up and run out, doesn't she?
Yeah. And so you get a sense of this woman has lived through this trauma. She's trying to protect Mima, maybe, you know, like all of those different things are there again in such an interesting textured way.
It is, and it's so much more interesting than if it had just been Me-mania the whole time.
Definitely.
Like the grotesque stalker, male, obsessed, you know, otaku guy.
Yeah.
It's like he is threatening, he is doing stuff.
Yeah.
I think he attacks Mima at the end, end. But actually, it turns out that Rumi's almost had him on like payroll, right?
Yeah.
Because doesn't she say something like, he didn't turn out as well as I thought he was going to, so I'm going to have to do it myself.
So you don't think it undermines the story it's telling by making the woman the killer at the end?
No,
I don't think it does either. I just wondered because, you know, the
what you
movie
mean in terms of like the messaging around
the movie
it?
is so much about the kind of toxic male fandom and the treatment of this girl, and then it doesn't, and I say this to its credit, and I just wanted to check this with you, that it doesn't feel like a twist for twist's sake, that actually it was the woman the whole time.
No, I don't think it does, because it's not like all the guys in it were red herrings.
No.
They were all doing fucked up, weird, inappropriate shit.
Yeah.
So they're all still as much of a creep as they were throughout the entire rest of the film. When you're watching it, you're watching Me-mania typing into Mima's room. Mm-hmm. You're watching the other fans kind of talking weirdly about the girls and obsessing over them, getting into fights at their shows because, you know, they think that they've got more ownership over them than the other fans do, etc.
Yeah.
You've got all of the kind of like slightly more innocuous stuff, but still, you know, pretty like troubling around like the screenwriters and, you know, the rape storyline and etc. So all of that is still true. You still witness all of that and see it, and all of the men are still as grotesque to all of those different levels as it is presented to you. They're not red herrings, apart from you assume at certain points during the movie they might be the killer. And no, they're not the killer. It's Rumi. Yeah. So I don't think it does undermine it at all.
No,
in fact, I think it makes it more interesting.
Makes it more interesting. It makes it really sad. It feels really tragic and sad and real somehow.
Yeah,
you know?
And I think it would have not worked as well if you didn't have this element of Rumi having been an idol before. If she was just like...
You're right, absolutely.
Another agent. But the fact that you know that she's been chewed up and spat out by this same industry, which is run by men, exploiting young girls. Yeah. You know, all of these... slightly inappropriate fans who are sort of leering over them the whole time. I think that it is still an indictment, even though the killer is a woman.
What a movie, right?
What a movie.
I'm going to ask you a really hard question. Akira or Perfect Blue?
Akira, thank you.
Okay, wasn't that hard?
No, it wasn't that hard. They're both 5-star movies. Yeah. I adore them both. They're
doing very different things.
They hold a lot of nostalgia for me. They've both been formative in terms of my love for Japanese art and Japanese culture, etc., etc. But Akira is in my top 5 films of all time. I just think it is. Well, I think Perfect Blue's flawless, but Akira is up there.
A personal fave. I think the legacy that both of these films have is unbelievable, really. Like the way in which they have shaped so much, I think, between them in two very different ways.
So different.
Perfect Blue, you see it much more as having shaped live action sort of mainstream art house kind of movies. The movies like I said, of people like Darren Aronofsky, David Lynch, those sorts of people. You just feel like, God, they owe a lot to Perfect Blue, it feels like, you know?
Yeah.
I want to finish by asking you, for people like me, for newbies to this world and to some of these filmmakers and storytellers, are there any other titles you would recommend people check out off the back of films like Perfect Blue or Akira?
Horror.
Yeah.
They do. Anime does vampire stories really well, and I have mentioned a couple of them. So Vampire Hunter D, I want to say Bloodlust. Is it? I'm sure it's Bloodlust, not Bloodlines. That's something else. That's Final Destination.
I feel like Bloodlines is like 50 for
Isn't
horror
there a
franchise.
Hellraiser Bloodline?
Yeah,
okay. I think it's Bloodlust. Vampire Hunter D
Yeah.
is really good. It's very gothic, really fun. And Blood the Last Vampire is a personal favourite of mine. I think they were both made in the same year. I think they were like...
You're also keen to screen that, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am actually, Mike. Yeah, I'm quite keen to see it. It's really short as well. Like, it's shorter than Perfect Blue. I think it is like 70 minutes or something. And it's about a vampire. It's a bit like Angel or like Spike. So she's a vampire, but she's also killing like other monsters.
Yeah, nice.
But she dresses as like a Japanese schoolgirl. It's hilarious.
Of course.
It's fucking great. So those would be like my two kind of go-tos. Death Note is really good.
Yeah,
That's
I've seen
more
Death
of
Note.
a that is more of a series than a film.
Yes.
But I really like it. It's really stylish and quite an interesting concept. Or like Revenge of the Overfiend, I suppose.
Yeah.
Tentacles.
Tentacles. Love a bit of tentacles. Well, there you go. Well, Becky, thank you. This has been what a joy.
Thank you for letting me talk about my nerdiest
I loved it.
behind the scenes obsession.
I bloody loved it, and I got to do it in person with you in 3 dimensions of all things as well. So that was lovely.
What a treat. We're going to have a takeaway.
Yeah, we're going to get a takeaway now. Yeah. Lovely. And in the meantime, Becky, let people know where they can find more Becky Darke.
You can find me on social media at Bunny Darke. I think Letterboxd, I'm Becky Darke. And you can find my website, beckydarke.com, if you want to come and work with me.
And Hammer Time.
Oh, and the podcast that I co-host with Kevin Lyons, that even though I've been doing it for about 4 months now, I still forget every single time.
Yeah.
It's called Hammer Time.
Yeah.
Kevin Lyons and I watch and dissect every one of the Hammer horror movies chronologically. It's really fun and wholesome.
So much fun.
And I love it so much. Come and listen. It's great.
Amazing. Becky, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that's it for this week. Thank you all so much for listening. And one more time, a massive thank you to my brilliant guest, Becky Darke. Loved discussing those 2 films. What fascinating discussions. Akira and Perfect Blue. Let me know your thoughts on them. You can email me, evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. You can also find us on socials. Evolution of Horror is on Instagram and Facebook. And I, Mike Muncer, am on Instagram and Blue Sky. If you want to listen to this episode ad-free, you can sign up to our Patreon, patreon.com/evolution of horror. That's where you'll also get regular bonus episodes every single week, including when we're on a hiatus between seasons. Evolution of Horror is part of the EOH network, and there are other weekly podcasts you can listen to. You can listen to Hammer Time, in which Becky Darke and Kevin Lyons go through every Hammer horror film chronologically. Carry On Up the podcast, in which Susan Kalman and I work our way through each of the Carry On films chronologically. And there's also The Detective and the Log Lady, a Twin Peaks rewatch podcast, which is now finished, but all 50 episodes in which Stacey Ponder and I work our way through the whole of Twin Peaks from beginning to end. They're all available wherever you get your podcasts. So, on to next week then. Next week, it's going to be a really fun one. I'm going to be joined by Devon Taylor, and we've got 2, I'm going to say slightly sleazy, trashy movies to discuss about man-made monsters. Next week, we're going to be discussing Richard Stanley's Hardware from 1990 and Paul Verhoeven's Hollow Man from 2000. What a weird pair. Join us next week for all of this and more on the Evolution of Horror.